There is an ancient scripture, perhaps the most ancient scripture, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in which the main character, Arjuna, one who is dedicated to fighting for good, is asked to engage in a different kind of battle. He asks his teacher the question, is this battle he is to engage in, is it inside the self or outside the self? And the answer he is given is, it doesn't make a difference. It all begins inside the self. My experience of the outer world is completely dependent on the state of my inner world. Whatever quality of life I wish to have outside, I must first achieve inside. And the battle we each engage in at some point is to regain mastery of our own inner world. To be able to create, sustain, and defend the quality of our own inner world. Inner peace, inner lightness, integrity, inner happiness. These are not a function of the outer world. They are a result of self-mastery. And the first element I need to gain mastery over is the foundation, awareness. To stabilize in true awareness of the self. Not according to the package or the image or the roles or responsibilities, but according to what is timeless, that is true. I am the life inside this body. I am a soul. To stabilize in that awareness is the first chapter in self-mastery. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, good evening. Welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is self mastery. This word, Raja Yoga, is sometimes I find for students who've been in the study for quite some time, we forget it's the point or the meaning of what Raj Yoga means. By just listening to the commentary, I was just reflecting on some of the questions that come up in the course of Raja Yoga, and when you were sharing a sense of self that is not defined by situations. And I could see all these questions that come up from different participants. Well, how about this situation, that situation? But then just the last thing you shared about the first step is just that awareness of I am the soul. And it felt very, very freeing and seemed to actually really feel like it was the answer to all questions. Could you share more about that?
Yes, I agree that souls really seem to enjoy um, the course, the lessons on Raj Yoga. They enjoy listening to them, experiencing them, and then they sort of start to think about day to day life. And I think, but what about this situation? And what about that situation? And the answer is always the same. Try being soul conscious, try being soul conscious. So there has developed definitely a disconnect between spirituality and day to day life, that spirituality just doesn't seem strong enough to address the real issues of day to day life. And so we go back to the old ways of trying to control the outer world without it ever realizing the point that Rajios is making is that what we have to get control of is ourselves, and then it will be a moot point to try and control anything out there. Everything we've been seeking regarding quality of life comes from self-control. So that never really gets a chance, that penny to drop, if I don't kind of experiment and buy into it. So I enjoy the things, but I don't actually see the application of it. I don't feel it's effective or relevant because spirituality was separated from day to day life for so long. So to really sort of realize, that is the answer. Self mastery is the answer to whatever I'm experiencing. For that kind of to connect in the soul, I think is a breakthrough. And then Raj Yoga becomes very relevant.
So I might as well answer my own question, timing. So in terms of timing, perhaps maybe that's what came up a lot in terms of the questions I do hear often. How about this situation, this situation? And could you perhaps maybe elaborate more on that? Because for someone who has no, exposure to spirituality, and then even that word spirituality is such a big umbrella term too. But when they've perhaps been maybe even in the midst of a situation, let's use something very, very severe. Let's say it's just some severe torture, domestic violence, or something like that. Excuse the language, but in the situation where you're saying, well, you take personal responsibility, I don't know how well that will go. Maybe for Viktor Frankl, but I'm not sure if it's really about how one says it, or because what usually when you hear personal responsibility, what often happens is they just take blame. It's like a tricky thing, and it feels like it all still goes down to self-worth.
So, what I've always enjoyed about the Brahma Kumaris, definitely they want to have everything be accessible and available, but still the soul has to come to the Brahma Kumaris. We do not proselytize or force anything on anyone. I hope No one feels that these interviews are that. But it does say seek out those who seem to be interested in character as an important part of life. Seek out those kinds of souls. They might be open to this. But one of my favorite pictures in Raj Yoga is the tree. And the other day I was really reflecting on the tree, and every part of the tree has its own speciality. Some are supporting other parts. So the roots are supporting the leaves, but they all have their beauty and speciality. And really feeling that's a bit like Raj Yoga, that it has its foundation, its roots, its seed, but it also manifests above ground in ways that people probably can connect to. And those doing the underground work are very much sustaining those who are more interested in the above ground work. What are each of those? The below ground is I want to work with awareness and virtues and spirituality. Above ground is more the practical techniques and tips that are a result. So, for example, when I am soul conscious, I drive more patiently. I am more generous with the other drivers on the road. That's a result, natural result of being soul conscious. I gain that kind of self mastery. But that's because I'm so conscious. There is another way to do the same thing. I could be counting back from 10 before I start the car, and I could, those are powerful tools that also will be somewhat effective. So, what I think suggesting is that at some level, souls do want to feel they have some mastery over their lives, but at what level they're willing to work, that's specific to each soul. Raj Yoga really appeals to those who want to go right to the sea, to awareness. So you won't have to try to convince them of taking responsibility. They'll actually be looking to take responsibility.
Is there a balance in terms of how one conducts themselves in terms of, yes, it's my personal responsibility in terms of how I'm supposed to be in any situation? But is there a line in terms of how someone else should be behaving? Let's say at a meditation center.
Yeah, it's definitely not facilitating dysfunction. That's not what we're saying. But what we are suggesting is that one who's a self master is probably more effective in supporting others and doing things that are beneficial for themselves rather than self destructive. And most importantly, they can do it without any violence. They come from a place of love. Love is a really powerful energy to help souls to take benefit. So it's not about, we had a beautiful signal yesterday, and I agree with it completely that and it's connected to your question, this idea of always let the words Haji, yes, yes, emerge. Sounds like you're a doormat and you're just allowing all sorts of mayhem to happen. But when you see it in action, it's really quite powerful. It requires a lot of love and sensitivity that, souls want to do something. They're very attached to doing something, even if that something is self-destructive. At that moment, they're very attached. And you can see that it's really not going to work to try to correct, at least verbally in any way. But I can create a vibration and create a real feeling, a relationship of respect. And that's going to prepare the soil at the right time to have a conversation about what's going on when the soul is ready. So it's really the onus will again come back on me. Not that I'm responsible for someone else's actions, but that I would like to be a healthy presence in other people's lives. So, what do I need to be doing internally to be that, to not, just sort of bowing down, people pleasing, continuing dysfunction? How can I be a healthy presence in other people's lives? Starts, of course, with the self.
I was just thinking about what is the so is there perhaps, I mean, I know you mentioned about timing, there's perhaps maybe a disinterest in um, becoming dependent on a situation or the past as being the reason for the unhappiness I'm feeling. But along with that, there's still no power, there's still no value. Do you feel there's a role that, when you talked about mother, is there a role in terms of igniting that sense of self-worth and self-respect in order for there to be taking personal responsibility that's not violent, that's not self-critical?
Of course, the Brahma Kumaris are an organization that puts mothers in front. And again, these are souls who are interested in the underground work. That they're very interested in a non-violent, more subtle approach to change. And I really was enjoying some sharing that happened from a senior sister last night. It was about control and, trying to control the self violently or control others violently. And it looked instead at vibration. And I really feel this is how mothers work, this deep trust in the more subtle aspects of change. So whether it's, with respect to the self, I'm not going to be very clear that I do have to have self-efficacy, but I don't want any violence. So to be very clear about that, so I'm going to be open to a different approach to this, a spiritual approach. But definitely with respect to some others, it's amazing how much vibration can do to support another soul, especially if they have, as you say, a deep wound that really has them kind of in a jail almost, really stuck. Um, Today there was a meditation and it was about the past and being at peace with the past. And, the souls commented, yeah, I'm constantly the past. And I said, welcome to the club. Everybody is constantly feeling, well, because this happened to me, I'm stuck here. It's like either I need to forgive someone or forgive myself. And the roles of love and enlightenment, these are very maternal things. The roles of love and enlightenment, that creating an atmosphere of love so that wisdom, learning from the past can happen rather than being stuck in the past. So this is mother and father combination, obviously, but definitely that feeling of love. This is a huge piece of what soul consciousness means, is that I am a valuable being. So taking as much time as needed to kind of get that foundation sorted out.
Perhaps you may have to clarify what love means, because that's another an interesting word that many have very, very much different feelings about. And especially when you're talking about mother, and lately, for whatever reason, I've been in contact with a few mothers actually, where their children had cancer or had cancer or passed away with cancer. And I would say most of them had shared that it nearly consumed their lives. So this aspect of love can sometimes be quite confusing, perhaps.
Definitely, I know. Again, this sounds cliched, but love becoming confused with attachment, and maybe both being there to some degree, but definitely confused with attachment, which is then, there's going to be some sorrow or some distress mixed in there because everything must change. Um, so to really have a different concept of love, it's connected to detachment, and that kind of is kind of confusing to many people. So we use the term instead unconditional love. Even if the soul leaves the body, unconditional love. But I think also to connect love to benevolence. I know a couple and they have two children, and one, it's actually the male, the husband, is more, I think, of the conventional concept of love. You know, very expressive, very, yeah, really demonstrations of that more conventional form of love, which is very lovely to see. And my mother knows I'm tough love. So, and I find it interesting because I find they actually are on the same page. They both are very, very focused on raising their children, who are daughters, um, to have a lot of self confidence and be able to stand on their own 2 feet. So, to make the soul healthy is the highest form of love. Nothing to do with me getting a return or anything. It's really about being able to see that soul be so self-sufficient they actually don't even need me. That's it. And this, of course, is God's form of love, is to come in as a benevolent, a benefactor, and get us to be able to stand, to be self-masters so that we don't even need him. That's a very high form of love.
I might combine two questions together, or maybe it's two elements. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud while I'm speaking. But just when you were sharing, I was thinking about not taking sorrow, if that's a part of self mastery. But I was in a situation, this is many, many years ago, in terms of tough love. And is there a place for both of those aspects, those two different types of parents? I was in a situation where it was a 14-year-old a patient when I was working with peds oncology, and he's been there for a couple of years, diagnosed with cancer, had to have stem cell transplants, just completely wiped his entire immune system, start again, but was experiencing graft versus host disease, which is very severe in terms of the ramifications. He spent a couple of years in there where you could just watch the soul decline. Like, he had such a great spirit, very vibrant, very expressive, and he was just losing so much of that life in him. And his parents were separated, and it was just, he didn't have that power to just spring up and come back to the way he was. And his father always kept saying, just get on with it, get on with it. And it just would break him even more. And I would just stand there watching this. And in my mind, I was like, he needs his mother, whatever that means. I don't even know his mother. But I was wondering if you could share about this piece. Is there a timing for both? But then there's also the self mastery of, you know, being able to not take sorrow.
I think definitely we don't want anyone to feel sorrow when we connect it to love, although we definitely see that happening in the world. Um, and yeah, when I think about the history of the senior students and the different approaches, so to really read the soul, I remember being in ballet school, and another term that's sometimes used for tough love is reverse psychology. Um, that you'd see the instructor come down and really quite harsh, thinking that the soul would be inspired to, but it would crush them. Versus on another soul, it would work. So, so you have to. Part of that is to really read what is going to inspire this soul. And we saw that with the original jewels. We see it even now with the students that, and we see this is quite normal in parenting, that you have perhaps a different approach, and to be able have the capacity to be relevant to the soul in front of you, I think is also a form of being loving. But the seed is the same, which is what might be missing. So in the story you told, I sometimes wonder if, as a parent, so afraid, feeling so helpless, so that it comes across as trying to get them to just get better, just pull yourself together. But it's not coming from a healthy seed. And I think the soul felt that, that the parent felt so helpless, and maybe didn't even know that's how they were feeling. So that when a soul actually uses a so-called tough love or reverse psychology, they're not only aware of whether or not that's appropriate for the soul in front, but also it's still coming from the same seed as they would use for soft love. That they have deep faith, confidence, trust, and respect for the soul's journey. So it's coming from the same seed. Might be two different approaches that's relevant for the soul in front, but it's coming from the same seed. So we always want to check, and that's my job to check as a self master. I don't, is any of my stuff getting mixed up in this communication? My own concerns, my own fears, my own desires, my own attachments. Is any of that mixed up? Because then it's not going to work. So I have to kind of check at that level, and that would be actually giving sorrow if it appears that I'm trying to do something to empower, but the drive behind it isn't really clean.
Gee, look at the time fly by. Perhaps maybe one question. One more question actually is about the connection between self mastery and forgiveness. In terms of, I mean, you were just using the example of that patient, that soul. And that's just one instance where they took sorrow, right? They weren't capable to, the father gave sorrow. He wasn't intending to, using that as an example, but someone who develops enough self mastery, whatever you want to call it, self respect, that they are capable to have forgiveness. Like, what does that look like?
I used to have these sort of strange conversations when I came into Raj Yoga with God, where I'd say, wow, the knowledge, the understanding you're giving is really making forgiveness possible. And the feeling I always got in response was like, actually, if you understood this knowledge, you realize that it's not even a question of forgiveness. There's nothing to forgive. It was nobody's fault. So definitely understanding is connected, which is another form of love, a very important one. Understanding is connected with changing how I feel about things. If you want to call that forgiveness, but if the understanding is so deep, because I often hear I can forgive, but I can't forget. Um, what we're trying to do is actually completely reframe, so that forgiveness isn't even part of the issue. Like such deep understanding and the feeling that as we get to know the big picture, even if a soul's in front of me and doing crazy stuff, the bottom line is there's a storyline there. And I always say, with the cards, the soul's been dealt. They're doing the best they can. Those cards are experiences through time, karmic accounts, pressures on the soul, lack of self worth. There's so many factors at play that's distorting our behavior. There's literally nothing else we can output than what we're outputting. You can't say try harder until such time as some realization or enlightenment or something happens, a shift happens. It's really going to be, there's not, the soul won't be able to really change in a sustainable way. So the role of understanding, um, rather than forgiveness, is okay, I understand. What we want is a change in the feelings of the heart. It should be that, a soul comes up to you, and I'm sure we've all had this happen. The soul will come and say, I am so sorry for what happened. I literally have no idea what they're talking about. And it's so annoying because then I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. That you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, no, I don't. Said, yes, you do. I'm like, okay, I just give up. But literally, it should change the feelings in the heart so much so there's not even anything to forget. That's, we're back into, that's kind of God's perspective. We think he judges, we think he's like, I do not blame or judge anyone. I understand. So to have that kind, and it's very important with self-forgiveness, which is more than anything else what we suffer from.
This feels like something I'm sure many would love to feel, to just completely forget and not erase it in any force, but completely change inside. So first we'll have a little reflection.
More than anything else, Raj Yoga is suggesting that our original, innate, natural state is one of self-mastery. And self-mastery from a benevolent stage. That is being able in any situation to cooperate with what is beneficial. That is our natural original state. Even if I feel so far from that stage, perhaps the first plausible step is to develop faith in that my natural, innate, original stage is to be benevolent, to have that self-mastery such that I can cooperate with benevolent outcomes. And then see where my journey takes me based on that complete faith in the self. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Judy. Sometimes I think I ask you difficult questions. But thank you for those who've come and joined with us on Instagram as well as YouTube. In terms of save the dates, this Sunday is World Meditation Hour. So for those joining for English, you can join us online through the YouTube channel. And for those who speak Hindi, it will also be available online, but also on site at the Inner Peace Center. So feel free to find details about the Inner Peace Center address if you're looking for that at the Calgary website. There is on the 27th of April, the last Saturday of the month, Learn About Meditation. It's a monthly workshop at the Academy. It's 75 minutes long, 12:15 to 1:30. We have lots of drop-in sessions in English, as well, those online and on site as well, and as well as in Hindi. So please feel free to check the website for all those details. Thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.